19 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
The world is remembering former President Jimmy Carter, who died today at age 100.
This is a sad day, but it brings back an incredible amount of good memories.
He went from a small-town Georgia peanut farmer to President of the United States. Later founding the Carter Center to promote peace, democracy, human rights, and economic and social development all over the world. His work earning him the Nobel Peace Prize. His life largely defined by his faith and service to others. Teaching Sunday school, volunteering with Habitat for Humanity. He was the longest-lived president in American history, leaving behind a legacy of love. Tonight, the flag is flying at half-staff at the U.S. Capitol in honor of the 39th President of the United States. And at the White House, where the flag is also at half-staff, plans are underway for a state funeral. Good evening, I'm Caitlin McCarthy. Mourners are finding themselves drawn to the Carter Center in Atlanta to comfort each other and to leave tributes, flowers, candles, even jars of peanuts for the man called an extraordinary leader, statesman, and humanitarian. As Christiane Benavidez reports, Jimmy Carter faced several health challenges in his later years, but pressed on with a joyful spirit.
Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, was surrounded by his family when he died peacefully at home in Plains, Georgia on Sunday. The former president celebrated his 100th birthday in October, along with a backyard military flyover honoring his service in the Navy. Almost a year earlier, he said goodbye to his beloved wife of 77 years, Rosalind, draped in a blanket embroidered with their images. The former peanut farmer turned governor of Georgia was elected president in 1976. His one term in office saw the highs of negotiating the Camp David Accords, bringing peace between Egypt and Israel, and the lows of the Iranian hostage crisis. After leaving office, his human rights and social welfare campaigns helped earn him the Nobel Peace Prize. For decades, he built houses with Habitat for Humanity.
Morning, everybody. Morning.
And drew national crowds to his Sunday school classes. Late in life, he battled a series of medical challenges, including cancer, a broken hip, and surgery to relieve pressure from bleeding on his brain. The longest-living former president spoke to churchgoers about his own mortality.
I didn't ask God to let me live, but I just asked God to give me a proper attitude toward death. And I found that I was absolutely and completely at ease with death.
To the end, Carter led a life of public service that impacted and inspired millions. Christiane Benavidez, CBS News.
A longtime Cleveland pastor is remembering his special connection to Jimmy Carter, the man he was proud to call friend for nearly 50 years. 19 News anchor Tiffany Tucker spent time with Reverend Otis Moss.
1980, when he was running for re-election.
Reverend Otis Moss Jr. reflecting on his friend, President Jimmy Carter.
What will you miss most about him?
Just his presence on the planet. President Carter was courageous, and he is one president who was willing to seek to lift people around the world.
Reverend Moss invited President Carter to Olivet Institutional Baptist Church in Cleveland, where he was a pastor for more than 30 years. The former president first visited with the congregation back in 1974 as a candidate, then in 1980 as President of the United States.
He was at home. He grew up in the Baptist church. He was a Sunday school teacher for more than a half century. For him to come to Olivet, it was really like coming home. When the choir started singing, "Lord, I can't turn back, just because I've been born again. I can't turn back." After they finished, he wanted them to continue.
The president even gave the Reverend and his wife several pieces of art with a personal note showing his appreciation for their friendship. Reverend Moss worked on both of Carter's campaigns. He and his wife invited to the White House on several occasions, including a state dinner.
We shook hands, and he had that down-home greeting. Hey, man, how you doing?
The pastor says he was most impressed with our country's former leader during a trip to Camp David.
And described what it was like to negotiate between Sadat and Begin. And this, to me, demonstrated the born-again spirit in a person who grew up in the narrow confines of racism and learned to fight against it and help others overcome it. His words, to be able to negotiate between two opposing forces.
What does President Carter's legacy mean to you, Reverend?
You can grow up, you can be born in ugly circumstances when it comes to racism and hate and all of the ideologies that people adopt. He was surrounded with that, but you can rise above it. And not only rise above it, you can work against it and live in a wider world and create a better world.
'19 News with continuing coverage of the death of former President Jimmy Carter. As soon as we know more about the state funeral arrangements, we'll share them on air, online, and the 19 News app.